Welcome to the Professional Development Seminar. Is everybody here for the first time? Wow, that's pretty good. So those who have been here before, I'm sorry you've heard this before, but Professional Development Seminar is something that we hold monthly. And the idea is all of the Wyakin Warriors have been in the military, and we always talk in the military about transition from the military environment to the civilian environment. What we try to do is to make sure that all the Wyakin Warriors have an advantage, truth be told, by the time they graduate. And one way we do that is to do professional training by those who have achieved and attained great things in life, who can lend their experience and their advice to the Wyakin Warriors as they make their preparation to head out into the civilian world. We've had the governor here, we've had all kinds of, we had CEOs, we've had Joseph A. Banks talking about how to dress for success, and then we have a special guest that I'll be introducing in just a couple of minutes. So welcome. We hold these as informal, and as our guest speaker is talking, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. That's what we're here for. And for those who haven't met, I'm Jeff Bacon. First, though, I'd like to introduce a couple of gentlemen sitting over here on this side of it. Why don't you guys come on up? James Burns and Mike Daniels are with Ambush Tactical, which is an organization here in town that provides advanced state-of-the-art weaponry to EMTs, to the police force, to first responders, to the military. State-of-the-art stuff. It's a relatively new company, but they're on a trajectory to become not so small the company. They're growing fast. And through, I think, the relationship with Alexander Crown, who has worked there, they were gracious enough at what's that called, the Northwest Tactical Expo at the Revolution Center in Garden City. They held a fundraiser for us. And before we get on to the big giant check, I want to turn over to you, James, let you say a few things about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that, Jim. My name is James Burns. I own Ambush Tactical. We've been in business since 2007. We started off as a training company trying to give good instruction to guys either going downrange in an operational capacity or law enforcement or just the average civilian that wanted to understand how to defend themselves. So we started off doing that. Ended up having questions about gear and our selection of stuff, so I started selling gear, and next thing you know, we needed a storefront, and now we're developing new products for the military as well as for law enforcement. So that's how we started, and we're just growing, and we like to be as big a help and support as we can to Wyakin as possible.
Thank you very much. Well, we can hoist up the
comically large check that Alexander.
Is there any cameras? Is that a camera or is that a video?
It's both.
You can do cameras. Okay. Well, would you join us?
Sure.
It'll take Forbes to place this thing.
Yeah.
Good. It's good. All right. Thank you very much. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Heather Cox. Heather lives here in the Treasure Valley, but more to the point, she has been with ESPN for 15 years, right? And she is an All-American volleyball player. She has covered the Olympics, 3 different Olympics, actually played at pro level in volleyball for a while, yeah. And we talk about the trajectory, and Heather's career is continuing to get more and more notoriety, and she is seen more and more places and at higher and higher levels. She's going to talk today about workplace communication. We're talking about the transition. If there's ever anyone who has to deal with intergender type communications, workplace environment type, places where people could potentially cuss a lot. That's Heather, and she has to maintain. Yeah, she's not the one that cusses, but she has to maintain. She has to be gracious. She has to maintain her professional demeanor in sometimes relatively hostile environments. She is going to talk to us about her experience and to lend us some of her advice. So if you please welcome Ms. Heather Cox.
And just so you guys don't get any crazy ideas, I did play professional volleyball, and I teased my husband about it, that I am the professional athlete in the family, but I made $50 a match, so don't get, it was a much different scenario than the NFL. But technically, I will always tell them that I was professional. So now I feel like a teacher, but I did print out some notes for you guys if you guys want it. James, there's some notes if you want. I totally feel like I'm a professor. So I did not study interpersonal communications. Probably not so if you like him. I was a public relations and communications major, but I do feel like my work experience has certainly challenged me and taught me a lot about. Is there anybody else that would like one? I have a couple.
I'll hand them out.
Okay, if anybody, I don't have a ton, but and again, you can doodle on it whatever you want. I feel like I'm certainly not an expert, but perhaps my experience in like Jeff said, being in hostile environments and having to react on the fly to things that you're not expecting, and working and learning about being in different environments, and how to handle yourself depending on the environment that you're in is hopefully some information that I can share with you. And as Jeff said, please feel free to ask any questions. We talked BSU football earlier. We've talked everything from my grandpa and my childhood to BSU football, so it's wide open, whatever you guys want to talk about, and it's fair game. But I think what's so great about you guys as Wyakin Warriors is that you have a platform. You have a voice that can be heard above everybody else's because of your experience and because of your history and because of your involvement with the Warriors, the Wyakin Warriors. You have a voice that can be heard. And so I think it's so important to learn how to get that message across, whatever your message is. Whether it be messaging for the Wyakin Warriors, or if there's a platform that you're passionate about, that you really want to get out there, learning how to communicate that message and the right way, I think is something that is a gift that you guys have, that you should take advantage of. So I'd love to talk to you about ways to do that, as well as ways to communicate with your professors, your colleagues, job interviews, anything that you think that would be helpful to know about, because it's unique. You guys are unique. The spotlight's on you a little bit more than an average student, and you guys should embrace that. It's there whether you want it or not, but hopefully you can take advantage of it, embrace it, and use it for you and the things that matter to you and that are really important to you. So I would say the first thing, I really thought, what can I provide? How can I help you guys? So I thought perhaps we could talk just about communication in public and in private, and then a little bit about social media, which I'm still getting used to, and then about interview techniques if you guys are in a position where you are being interviewed by the media. Some tools, some tricks of the trade that perhaps I can share with you that will help make that a little bit easier. So the first thing, and some of this seems, and I apologize because I don't mean to, some of it seems so simple, but it's a really good reminder. The most important thing is know your audience. That is crucial, and that's something that, you talked about. It's so important for me to go in, and if I'm sitting in a room with a college football coach and an offensive and defensive coordinator, the way I interact with them is a whole lot different than the way I interact with that coach when we're on live TV at halftime versus, being here with you guys. You just really need to understand your audience. And as Maureen said, the gender thing is something to be aware of, especially things like body language and tone. Those type of things that you maybe take for granted when you're with a bunch of guys, in a hostile environment, that you just know that your brother's there for you at all times, and that you don't need to worry about your tone or your delivery or your body language. In different settings, in a work environment or an interview, it's a lot more crucial. And I think oftentimes, and you know, this is in your interpersonal relationships as well, in your dating life, in your married life, in your boss to coworker life. I think that tone and body language almost says more than your words do. So I think it's really important that you be aware of what you want to say with your body language and your tone, and say it with your words as well as your body language and tone. I think anybody that's married or in a relationship could say that, you know, it's one thing what the words are, but it's a whole other thing the way that you're delivering them. So to just be aware.
Yeah, and 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So how do you practice that? I mean, how do you, because when you're in an interview, good interviewers get beyond the words.
Right.
So for our warriors here, how do they practice that? How do you
Every
become
day.
aware of that?
Every day, every time you open your mouth, every time you have you're at Starbucks, I mean, every single time use it as an opportunity to really judge yourself and judge the person that you're talking to. And judge is maybe the wrong word, but learn from it and make sure that you're conveying the message that you want to convey with your body language and your tone, and see how people react to you. And that will give you a really good insight about the way that you're delivering your message. The reaction, I think the way that you read how that person is reacting to you can tell you a lot about the way that you presented it. If you get, you know, somebody that gets really hostile and defensive all of a sudden, then perhaps you need to assess the way that you delivered it and what your message was, and make sure, you know, there's that famous, let's see if I get it right, say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. And it's kind of really good words to live by. You're rolling your eyes, James. Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. And it really, I mean, it's kind of a good rule of thumb to go by. Make sure, did I deliver the message that I wanted to? Did I do it in the way that I wanted to? And was I kind but effective? And I think those are some good things to remember as you go about really any area of communication in your life. The other thing is to be really open with your channels of communication. I so wish, you know, they all say hindsight's 20/20, and as Jeff said, I was a high school and college volleyball player, and now that I am in the sports world and I can see it from the other side and see the coach's perspective, as a player, I so wish I had the courage to speak up more and to go knock on my coach's door and ask him, you know, what do you need from me? What can I do to help this team be better? What areas do I need to improve on, and how can I improve on? How can you help me get there? Can I come into the gym a half an hour early? Things like that I never did because I was intimidated and afraid of, and my coach was like the nicest guy in the whole wide world. I mean, now I look at him like, well, why was I afraid of this man? You know, he's just a guy. And I look back and I regret that because I think I could have been a better player and a better person and helped my team that much more. So don't be afraid. If you have questions, go ask. You know, find the right time, make an appointment, whether it's your professor or your boss. If you're not getting the results that you want, don't be intimidated to really open those levels of communication, because otherwise you just don't know. And in my business, it's the same thing. I mean, you can do the national championship game 5 years in a row, and then that 6th year you don't get hired for it. And you think, well, shoot, what did I do? What was I doing wrong? And you go to find out that your boss didn't care for the method that you interviewed coaches at halftime or something like that. And if only you had asked, and if only they had been proactive and come to you, then you would know and you can fix it. But if you know what you need to fix and what you need to work on, and if you can open those levels and lines of communication, I think it's crucial in most all relationships. This is a huge thing, and now I'm going to say it like 20 times for the rest of the night, is the verbal crutches. I am a big believer in be careful with your delivery on the ums, the likes, the so's. I call them verbal crutches because to me, it's what you do when you don't know what to say next, or if you're nervous. So instead of saying or so, because you're trying to think of what to say next, just take a beat. Just pause, slow down. I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute right now because I'm nervous in front of all of you guys. And instead, I just need to slow down and think, what is it that I'm trying to say? What is it that I want to say? And if I'm not quite sure, just take a minute. You know, don't be going a mile a minute. And you're feeling all this pressure, like if you're in a job interview, or if you're doing a presentation in your class, to get everything out the way that you rehearsed it, in the way that you want, and make sure that all your messages are getting out. And instead, just chillax for a second, or take a beat, and then just wait and just make sure that you're really delivering it the way that you want to. And try, you can watch anybody on TV and just start marking how many times they say or how many times they say so, and it will drive you batty. It really, and that's all you end up hearing. You can't even hear anything that they're saying because you're so in tune with the ums. So that would be, and again, I think all of these rules or thoughts apply to anything, day-to-day conversation, with the Starbucks person, with your colleagues, with your teachers, with your employers, with your people that you're interviewing with. It applies across the board. The next one to me is listening. I mean, that is, I think that's just like the nonverbal body language and tone, the listening, I think can make you the best communicator possible. I think so often, like you could be at a cocktail party or just idle chit-chat, and I think people are so worried about what they're gonna say next that they don't listen to what the person is saying to them. And I think that is a gift. People that are really good communicators and really good friends and really good people are good listeners. They're hearing what you say and reacting to what you say instead of just going into the next point. And I'm guilty of it all the time. I'll be doing an interview and there's somebody talking in my ear telling me we're going to commercial and counting me down from 10, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't think I heard a word that person just said. And it makes you a much better interviewer if you've heard that person, because 9 times out of 10, the best question is the follow-up question. The one that happens after the first one based on what they said. And you've got to be able to hear it. And even if you don't have somebody talking in your ear and counting you to 10, there's so many other things distracting you that you kind of forget to listen. And I really think it's a gift. People that can listen well and really just check in and touch base are really good communicators, again, in every aspect of life. And a big part of that to me is names, remembering somebody's name. How often do you meet somebody and think to yourself, I just met you and I don't think I heard your name. And it's not that you didn't say it, it was that I wasn't even listening and I didn't hear it. And that, if you could just focus in when you're meeting somebody for the first time and say the name either in your head or out loud, I think that's a huge interpersonal skill to have that will help you in every facet of life. I mean, remembering somebody's name, it sounds so simple, but how often do we forget it? And I think 9 times out of 10, it's not because we didn't hear it. It's because we heard it, but we didn't listen to it. It didn't absorb. So the more that you can say, hello, Matt, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming tonight. Instead of, hey, how are you? It's good to meet you. It just sinks in, and you become that much better of a communicator. I just said, by the way, you can give me I'll do a quarter in the jar. What'd you say?
I said swear jar.
Oh, a swear jar, exactly. Let's see, where am I? Oh, and that leads to the whole eye contact thing. Same thing with the names and the listening. The more you can have eye contact with somebody, the more it's going to mean to them, and the more that you're going to remember as well. Back to that whole cocktail party example, there's nothing that bugs me, maybe the ums, but actually this probably bugs me more, is when somebody's talking to you and they're just looking around, and they're just waiting for the next best thing. Like they're just making sure they're not missing anything. Or they're nervous. I think it's one or the other. But if you're engaged in a conversation with somebody and you're not locked in, I think it's a sign of disrespect, and it's a sign that you're almost telling that person that they're not worthy. Like you're looking around trying to think, okay, who else am I going to go talk to, or what am I going to do next? Or again, it's nerves. So if it's nerves, gather yourself, pause, relax, and focus in. Listen, look, have that eye contact, and really be present. That's something that my husband always teaches me is, he always says, if you're going to be there, be there. Which sounds so simple, but it's with everything. If you're at the gym, be at the gym and get a good workout in. Not that I'm ever there, but he uses it for that. But he uses it for me when I'm on the road, because when I'm on the road, I'm guilty, and I feel badly about wanting to be home and be with my family. And when I'm with my family, I so lock in on trying to be a good mom and a good wife that I feel like I'm not doing my job when I'm at home. So he really preaches to me, be present where you are. If you're at home, be there 100% and enjoy it and soak it all up. And then when you're on the road, don't feel guilty. Be present there and do your job the best that you can, and don't be distracted by the wanting to be home and feel like you're not being a great wife or mom. So be present in every conversation that you're having. Otherwise, it's disrespectful to you and to the person that you're engaged with. So that's all of my little bullet points for just communication. Social media, there's only 4 because I am still super lame at social media. I am trying. My employers really want me to be better at Twitter and Facebook, and I'm trying. But the things that I have learned is that it is a very dangerous tool, and that you guys should know about. You should be very careful with it, especially being in the public eye more than an average student. It's imperative that you think twice, 3 times, 4 times. I mean, reread it, and make sure. Is this okay to any audience? Is this tweet going to offend anybody? Is this tweet, will my mom get it? Will my child get it? Will my employer get it? And by get it, like not only understand the message, but also not be offended by it. Mike Trico always tells me the 4 most dangerous letters in the world right now are send. Because the minute you hit send, there's nothing you can do, and then it's out there. And especially for people that are in the public eye a little bit more. I mean, your hose, once it's gone, and you can't take it back. So just be really careful with Twitter and make sure that the message that you want out there is appropriate, again, to everybody, and that it's not going to come back and bite you in the butt. The last section I have is just on interviewing tips, and I don't know how often you guys are interviewed by the media, but the last time I met you all, or saw you all, was when you were being inducted. And there are a lot of news channels there, and I know that there's a lot of interest locally and nationally with what you guys are doing as Wyakin Warriors. And the more that you can feel comfortable in the media, the more it will help you and what you guys are doing, what the Wyakin Warriors are doing, but also really help you in wherever you go now, with everyday life, the ability to be comfortable in front of, in public speaking, be able to give a good interview. Well, it's a win-win. Helps you guys, helps the Warriors, it helps everybody. So I hope and talk about some tips that I'm on the other side of the microphone, so I know what my tricks are and how I'm trying to manipulate you guys to say what I want you to say. So I try to reverse it and think, okay, if I'm on the other side, what would I tell these guys to not fall for my tricks?
Did you give up your tricks? Did you tell them what tricks you use as a reporter?
I will. I will for sure. The biggest trick is the last one on here, which is the whole silence thing. My trick is to not say anything, and then you guys get nervous, and so you keep talking. And that's when I get the best stuff. So if you're ever doing an interview and you've gotten your message across and you are finished with your answer, put a period on it and just wait. And it feels awkward. It feels like this huge pregnant pause. But you will, if you open your mouth again, you will say something that you regret. I tell you, it happens all the time. And just let me be uncomfortable and me think of, okay, what am I going to ask next? And just lay out. And when you're done and then you decide to keep talking, it's always a bad thing. One thing that can make you a really great interview subject is to repeat the question and the answer. A lot of times you'll see interviews where you won't hear my question. So if I ask you, what's your major, and you just say, business, that's a really hard soundbite for me to use. If you say, oh, I'm a sophomore at Boise State and I'm majoring in business and I really hope to open my own business someday, that is a perfect soundbite. That is something that I can use because you've incorporated the question into your answer. So I don't need to set it up at all. Also, talking in sound bites is important, and that's something the more interviews you do, the more you'll get a sense for it. But talking in little snippets and figure out what your message is, and say it and then stop, and then just pause. And those, especially for television, are ones that they'll be able to use a lot, and they'll get a lot of leverage out of. Be prepared. I think that's huge. Know who is interviewing you and what they're doing it for. A perfect example, tomorrow, I'm doing 2 interviews tomorrow. One at 9:30 tomorrow morning is for Babbel.com, and it's a mommy blog that I guess is just this big mommy blog that I knew nothing about. And then in the afternoon, I'm doing one for Sports Illustrated. So my audience, very different. So I need to prepare myself, and when I'm talking to Sports Illustrated, not talk about, troubles getting pregnant and nursing and, things like that, and vice versa. So you really need to know your audience. So I will sit in the morning, hopefully, and figure out, what do I think is most compelling for the mommy audience? What would they want to know? And then for the Sports Illustrated audience, it's certainly a much different message. So understand who is interviewing you and why, what their format is. You know, is it a really long column that they're writing, or is it something that's just going to be a quick little blurb? Try to find out as much about that person that's talking to you before you talk to them. In fact, if you can go online and do a Google search for work that they've done in the past, you just get a much better idea of who they are, what they want, and it makes you look better in the long run. Some of these are, you know, obviously very simple. Be positive, stay positive. Don't let the reporter get under your skin. We tend to bug people. You know, we'll keep asking questions, and we'll ask it in different ways to try to get the answer that we want. And try not to get flustered. It's hard because we can be a little irritating at times, but if you stay cool, you come across a lot better. And so obviously it's all about you and your message, and the more that you can remain calm and carry on and just endure the torture of the interview, the better. The other thing is, if for any reason you're ever in a situation where the reporter is aggressive or asking questions that you're not comfortable with, maybe if there's times that you don't want to talk about what, you know, your injuries or what happened overseas or anything like that, and they're really getting on, just always try to turn it to the positive and figure out a way to turn their negative and maybe some of their inflammatory words into positives. And it's never feel uncomfortable not answering a question. If they ask you something that you're not comfortable answering, try to get your message across in a positive way and then move on. And don't ever feel like you're pinned down and having to answer something that you're just not comfortable with. We're also infamous for interrupting. If I've asked you a question and I don't like the answer I'm getting and I'm short on time, a lot of times people interrupt. And if you really want to get your point across, say, excuse me, can I finish? Especially if it's print. You know, it's different too. Know your format. If it's print and it's recorded and they're just going back to get sound bites, feel free to say, wait a minute, I wasn't finished. Let me continue my thought here. And even on television, you can do that. And I can't imagine very many times where you'll be on live TV. It'll always be taped. If you don't like something and you don't like the way that you answered, stop and start over. You know, they're only going to take the bites that they need. So if you're feeling like you're going down a path that you don't like and you're not comfortable with, just stop, because then they can't use it. Or throw, you know, an F-bomb in there. That's actually it. My last one was the silence one. I mean, that's the most awkward one, is you just feel like you need to keep talking.
You realize what the takeaway here is, we're all going to say we can use the F-bomb.
Heather said we could use the F-bomb. Maybe not the F-bomb, but if you're not liking your answer, if you just stop, they can't use it. You know, so just remember that you are in control. And I think a lot of these tips can carry over to job interviews, you know, meetings with bosses in the workplace, with teachers, with professors. You know, let them know that you're in charge too. You know, even if it's a situation where it's a boss or an interviewer or a teacher, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to communicate and try to get the answers that you need. Don't be afraid to keep answering their question. I mean, don't let them stop and start you. I hope that these interview tips can not only be used for media, but can be used in a situation where you're being asked questions or you're in an uncomfortable setting where, you know, they're really going after you, and that you can be in control of the situation instead of letting them control you.
I think a tendency with the public, especially those not familiar with the military, is when they talk about wounded, injured veterans, there's a pity factor that comes in. And if you talk, I'm sure the conversation we had earlier, if you talked about pity, not one of the white warriors likes that. In fact, to the other extreme, they resent that.
Right.
And then for us who are in the program, we want to take that even further, where we consider these 11 men and women to be future leaders. So if they're dealing with a reporter who's you know, focusing on suicide rates, unemployment rates, you know, all the negative things you hear about veterans, how do they turn that around? You talk about, you want to answer a question, you can. you're in that situation and someone's talking about, well, it must be really tough being a wounded warrior, and you must have PTSD and all that.
Right. I would have some stories in your back pocket, some positives about veterans, and things that you guys have done for positive change. So if they start going down that path or want to have a pity party, say, you know what, yes, this may have happened, but look at what's come out of it. Look at the positive that's come out of it. I've got to do this, 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 and this. Any way that you want to spin, I hate that word, but control it and redirect it to a positive. And if they're talking about suicide rates or stress, any of those things, have some nuggets in your back pocket of, yeah, but do you know that 75% of veterans are leaders in this industry, or anything that you can do, because obviously there's 10 times more good than bad. So know what that 10 times good is and use it, and don't let them pigeonhole you and talk about the things that are negative. Turn it into the positive. And you can say, yes, in some cases, whatever they're talking about, obviously in some cases that has happened. But here's the good. Here are all the things that we're doing that are fantastic. And, I wish I need to talk to Cliff more to have some better examples and have some numbers to throw out at you. But obviously the good stories far outweigh the bad. So know those good stories and know the good stories about you, that you're comfortable with sharing. Obviously, I would think that there's some things that you're not comfortable sharing, some things that you are, as with all of us. So find what you're comfortable with and just turn it. Address it, don't be rude. Address, yes, there are instances of this, but what about all the good that we're doing here, 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 and here? And these amazing opportunities that we have and the education that I'm getting, all the good that there is. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's huge. And the other thing to understand is that I think a lot of times if that happens, it's because people don't understand. We have no way to even begin to imagine what you guys have been through. And so I think it's the ignorance and the not knowing and the not understanding that sometimes would lead to those type of questions and misunderstanding. So I would say maybe have empathy and compassion that we're clueless sometimes, and teach us, really educate us. Because I think that's a big problem. Okay.
I won't name any names.
Probably me.
I wasn't going to say a single name.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talk in general. Okay. Social media. How do you try to address it properly? Twitter, Facebook, those two in particular. More so Facebook with this group. Not naming names. More so Facebook, but a lot of times you tend to say what's on your mind immediately, right then and there. It's kind of immediate gratification. It's a way for you to get off your chest whatever's on your chest. How, in your experience, granted you're more of a media superstar type person, people know you, they see you, they hear you, and if you say something that might be a little off, they go, oh, Heather Cox said this. Yeah. Whereas if Tom Burns says something, I'm like, who the hell's Tom Burns? But how do you control some of that? And how do you, what are the consequences for someone that doesn't necessarily take a pause and look at what they write before they send it out?
The consequences can be drastic. I mean, how many times have we heard about somebody losing their job because of something that they tweeted? It happens a lot, especially, public figures. So the best advice I could give you is, again, read it 3 or 4 times. That old adage, what is it, measure it twice, cut it once? I mean, same thing. Read it 2 or 3 times and make sure that that's the message that you want out there. If it's frustration or things like that, I would say find another channel. Go work out, go write a paper, do something to get your mind off of it. I would not use Twitter or Facebook for opinions, I guess would be my biggest advice. For news, for information, for spreading the word, posting a blog or something that you guys are doing as Wyakin Warriors or something that you're trying to get the word out there. But I would be very careful to post opinions and frustrations, because it's always there. And future employers can see it. I mean, I think 99% of future employers these days can look you up on Facebook and see what you're all about. You know, be careful about posting a picture with a beer in your hand. Be careful about any of that. I mean, be careful about having a picture taken with a beer in your hand. I mean, if you're at a wedding and you've got a glass of champagne, just set it down before the picture gets taken. You can't be too careful. Be careful who your arms are around. It sounds silly, but things get taken out of context and people see things and they don't know the history. That's the other thing I think I put on there, is make sure that it can stand alone without explanation. You know, you want to make sure that in a year, when you go and have a job interview and somebody looks for you on Facebook and they see a picture of, I don't know, a mud wrestling or something, that it can stand alone. You know, maybe it was for charity and it was how many you could get, you were earning money for some charity, but they don't know that. I mean, that's a crazy example. I'm just trying to think of something that out of context, somebody would look at it like, what's that all about? Just make sure that anything you post, you would be good with your grandma looking at, and your child, and you know, that it's good for all audiences and that it stands alone, that it doesn't need a story to be told around it.
So you work with predominantly men, and there's a different body language, there's a different tone, and there's a lot of different colorful language. So what do you find to be one or two things that men don't seem to understand when they're communicating with women, how they're perceived?
I would think the biggest thing is, you're saying for men talking to women.
Yes.
I think body language and tone, I think that's huge. I think especially men that are used to being with a group of men aren't offended by body language and tone as much as women are. So I think that you just have to be extra careful and sensitive to that, and just really make sure that, again, what you're saying, that your body and your tone matches what you're saying. And I don't think you can be too careful. And I think that women in the workplace really appreciate men that understand that. This is why he really likes me. I think it's the Oreos. I guess err on the side of caution would be my biggest piece of advice, and make sure that you're maybe calmer, gentler, less robust. I don't know what the right words are to say, but just to be cognizant, be more feminine, be metrosexual.
When you've been interviewing somebody on TV, have you ever had to get in their face and just back them down?
Yeah, absolutely. More so off camera than on, but at times you want it. There's a really fine line of, I'm not going to get taken advantage of, but I also don't want to look like a fool or make you look like a fool. But I can think of one interview that I did with a coach where afterwards I just said to him, I respect what you do, can you please respect what I do? And he answered my question. And I said, you know what, you're right. Here's the answer to your question. So I think there's times that you don't want to be too soft, and you want to do your job and do it well, and you want to be respected, but you also want to make sure that you're doing it appropriately to the point where the next time that you interact with that person, that they will still have that same level of respect, and that they'll answer, you know, that they'll do their job and respect your job. So it's a fine line, it really is, and I think every situation is different. But you just need to make sure that you're reading them correctly and that you're using the right tone and body language and words, that all three of them are the same.
At ESPN headquarters, and you go back to, I guess it's Bristol?
Right.
And you walk in there and you've got, let's see, you've got Tarico, you've got Van Pelt, you got all those guys. Do you ever walk in into the office there and just start hearing F-bombs and, you know, all kinds of curse words? Okay, good. So you know, even though, you know, those guys are probably really good friends and, you know, there really isn't a place for that in the workplace.
Exactly.
I mean, even though they're the best friends, and you just got to know your environment, right? And know who's around or who may walk into the place.
Exactly.
Right? Because
I think no matter if you're a professional football player, a former Marine, you know, the President of the United States, it doesn't matter. I don't think in any workplace is it appropriate to feel like you're in a bar or feel like you're in a fraternity. It's knowing your environment and knowing your audience. I'm not going to say that Tariq and Van Pelt aren't going to be, you know, telling dirty jokes and drinking beers at a bar, but they're not going to be doing that at work. And there's a difference. And I think, and it's not just at work, because for us, we're working not in an office. You know, we're at a stadium or in a coach's office all around the country. And so it's just knowing when you've got your work hat on versus when you've got your playing hat on. And there's a huge difference. So, you know, we could be standing on a football field with a bunch of football players that are telling dirty jokes and swearing and screaming at each other. We know in that environment, in that setting, we can't do that. If we're at the bar with them, we will, but we won't if we're doing our work.
But even then, Heather Cox, who's at the grocery store, can't. I mean, you've got to watch what you do also.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Wyakin Warriors, you're on campus, you're in the classroom, wherever. You also have to be aware, because again, whether you like it or not, you're Wyakin Warriors. And so Heather Cox is Heather Cox. Wherever she goes, she's Heather Cox. Whether she's at ESPN headquarters, or she's at Albertsons, or she's at Florida State.
Right, you're right. And that's a lesson that I need to listen to more often. I mean, I will tell you, I wrote a bull in a bar and looked up and there was like 10 cell phones out. And you just have to remember. You just can't do that anymore. I can write a bull at somebody's house that I know and that I'm comfortable with, but I'm not going to do it at a bar. So it's just knowing in this day and age of social media, and especially when you guys have those shirts on, don't do anything that you wouldn't be proud of. You know, because somebody will take a picture of it, somebody will post it, and it's better safe than sorry. It's just not worth it. You just need to err on the side of caution for sure.
This is fun.
That's what I was thinking.
I did that before without my leg on it. Put it on Facebook. People thought it was awesome. You said something.
You're not Heather Cox.
You said something that really jumped out at me. You spoke of the Wyakin Warriors as public figures. I hadn't really thought about that before. But you're right, they really are public figures.
Absolutely.
Will become more so. I mean, I'd say probably 2/3 or 3/4 of you have been interviewed. Probably 3/4 have been interviewed or had a video done of that or something. And before long, be 100%. So you're right. That's a really good point. You have to think of yourselves as public figures. When I worked for an admiral, it was always the front page test. Whatever you do is okay if whatever you're trying to do shows up on the front page of the Washington Post. And that was always the test for the admiral. And that's the way you have to kind of look at it, because what would happen if all of a sudden whatever you're doing, it shows up on the front page of the Iowa Statesman. And I think what's so important is that it affects not just you, but it affects all the Wyakin Warriors here, but even more to the point, it affects 25 or 30 or 50 severely wounded, injured veterans out there in the country who need some help. And the funding dries up. You guys are all covered, but they're not. So you got a responsibility to all those guys. I mean, that's a huge point. It's just relatively people. So.
And I mean, what you guys are doing right now, you're setting the stage for the future. And the success that the Wyakin Warriors has is going to be largely on you guys. It's on your ability to get the word out there, your ability to be good role models, your ability to help by doing a good job and really taking advantage of this opportunity so that people want to donate and want to help and want to make it possible for veterans in the future to come do what you're doing. So I think it's vitally important that you guys represent yourselves in the way that you want to and in a positive way, and the way that in 20 years when you look back you can be proud and you can see that this is the 22nd class instead of the 2nd class, and it's just gotten bigger the role models that you guys have been and the success that you've had. I think that's what it's all about.
Scenario. I'm going to go with my favorite team. You scheduled an interview with Kobe Bryant, and something came up. Got caught up in LAX traffic.
Me or Kobe?
You did,
Okay.
because you're actually going to go interview Kobe. You scheduled this interview with Kobe, and you're going to be late. What do you do?
Call him and ask if his helicopter can come pick me up.
But so you call him, right?
Yeah.
You don't just
Absolutely call
you
him.
just don't blow him off. What happens if you blow off a big interview with Kobe
Never
or?
get them again, ever. So over communicate, don't under communicate. I mean, I am a huge believer in that. It's the more that you can communicate and just know that we're all on the same page. You know, if you've got an interview tomorrow, I have the Sports Illustrated interview I'm doing tomorrow. It was coordinated through ESPN PR. So the ESPN PR person called me and said, are you willing to do this? Here's the guy's name and number. We're doing it at 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, great. But I took it a step further, texted the guy, said, the ESPN PR guy gave me your contact information. I'm looking forward to talking to you at 4 p.m. Eastern. Here's my cell in case anything comes up. You know, over communicate. Make sure that there are nothing can fall through the cracks, especially like in job interviews and meetings, things like that. You can't over-communicate. Make sure that there's no way that you can, oh, I didn't have your cell phone number. Oh, I didn't know what street the restaurant was on that we were meeting at. Just dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure that there's nothing that can go wrong, that you're in control of everything that you can be in control of. I'm a huge believer in don't worry about things that you can't control. I mean, that's a waste of time. But the things that you can control, you know, rock it. Like, just make sure that you are in total control. So if I'm doing an interview with Kobe, not only am I calling Kobe and saying I'm going to be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'm calling his publicist, I'm sending out his coach, his PR person, making sure everybody knows, making sure that not only does Kobe have the information, but all of his people and his handlers do too. I mean, you just can't over-prepare or over-control the things that you can control. I guess that's why I'm huge in preparation. I can control my amount of preparation. I can control how much I know going into the game. I have no control over what happens in the game. It's live television, it's a live sporting event, all hell could break loose. There could be an earthquake, there could be, you know, I could be doing a report and completely forget what I'm talking about and make crucial mistakes. That I can't control. You know, what I can control is that I put myself in a position for that not to happen by over-preparing and making sure that everything that I can control is controllable, and then it makes the uncontrollable that much easier to manage.
There are many times watching the news, it's not all positive stuff, so a lot of times when you know you're going to be in front of members of the media being interviewed, you're already on the defensive because you know they're looking for something negative and not the positive piece you're trying to put out there.
Right.
Is there anything we can do as people that are doing the interview to reframe that in a more positive light so we don't go into something like that on the defensive already? Is there positives, ways of using media?
Absolutely. Again, it's being prepared, knowing what the interview is about, and talking to the person before the interview. I would suggest never do an interview. Like if you pick up your phone and they say, hey, this is stuff from the Statesman, can we talk? Always say, yes, we can. What's a good time for you? Do you want to call me back tomorrow at 2, or should I call you? Don't just do the interview right there. That's one way to control it. And at that time, say, well, can I ask you what it's about? What kind of story are you writing? What do you need from me? And make sure that you know what the message is and what the angle is and what that person is what the storyline that they're seeking is. And if it is negative, you can, one, choose not to do it. You can, two, think about, and again, this isn't being prepared, how you can turn it into a positive. So don't let a reporter ambush you. If you're walking across campus and a news person comes up to you, and I think 9 times out of 10 it's going to be scheduled and it's going to go through channels before they get to you. But just make sure and ask the question. You know, you're the one in the power. You're the one that's driving the boat. Make sure that you have all your questions answered and that you're in a comfortable situation before you go in. Because if you're uncomfortable, it's going to show. You know, that's when you get nervous, that's when you say things that you're maybe not comfortable with. So the more that you can control and knowing who's writing what and why and what their agenda is, the better you'll appear. And if it's negative, I would say you can say no, or you can figure out how to turn it into a positive.
I could add a little bit to that. But all I asked was about it when Iraqi freedom was shut down, and all the troops were finally being taken out. We got a call from one of the local news media, one of the interviews by reporters about their thoughts on Wyakin ended. It wasn't worth it, and he shut that off. But those are the sorts of questions that you could see coming down the pike, where somebody could ambush you in a situation and they ask you some kind of critical question, something very sensitive, quicker to feed. I mean, the idea of pushing back on them and saying, I'm not going to talk right now, we can talk later, and find out a little more information first.
And another little trick is if they ask a negative question or use a negative word or a word that you're not comfortable with that makes you defensive, don't use that word in your answer. Again, a lot of times our questions aren't heard. So the only thing they're going to hear is your answer. So if they're negative and put you on the defensive and it's something you're uncomfortable with, don't use their words. Don't even justify their negative word. Use your positive word in the answer, because that's what they will use. That's on TV what you'll hear, or in writing what they'll print.
That is actually exactly what happened to me when I came home from Iraq, out of the hospital and everything. For when I told my mom when I was coming home, I told her, don't let any press know I'm coming. Because they already had found out. And they were like, when's your son coming home? They had called her, all of this, and she's like, I don't know when he's coming. Because I told her, don't tell them, I don't want them there.
Right.
When I came home. And then I came home, and about 2 weeks later, my old high school wanted me to come and speak in an assembly. And okay, so I decided to do that, not thinking that the high school would have press there.
Gotcha.
So then I got interviewed, I got ambushed, and all my answers that I gave got chopped,
Yeah.
and everything was put together.
Right. That's brutal.
And so it turned me into this guy that was totally against the war, and that basically disrespected myself. And I called them and basically said, like, that's not what I said.
Right.
But they didn't care.
That's the worst. That's them not doing their job well, and there's nothing worse than that. And that is very hard to control, because again, you can control it by trying to talk in sound bites. You can control it by stopping if you're not comfortable in the direction that you've gone and starting over, because again, they can't hear something like that. But when they edit something, you're out of your control. And again, that's sort of a trust thing. It's talking to people that you trust and that you know do good work, that are good journalists. But when you're ambushed like that, it's a really frustrating feeling, and I'm sorry you went through that, because there's nothing worse than being represented in a light that's not you. Yeah, well, I mean, it happens to me. It happens to all of us. It sucks. You control it as much as you can.
We're just about out of time.
Okay.
Thank you. We could probably talk about half an hour.
This was a treat. Thank you, guys. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
meeting you.
So we usually give our guest speakers a coin or a shirt, but it's always that golf polo shirt. So we got the bonus perspective, now we gave you a non-polo.
Oh, thank you. And I promise I will not wear this in a bar on a bull. Only if I will behave every time I have this on.
Thank you very much. That was very educational. In fact, some of the stuff she talked about, we're going to go over. So I do interviews and job preparation for people. So a lot of stuff that were in your notes, I will turn into our interview practices, because the social media stuff, I'm really big on. So that was really helpful.
Good.
Thank you.
It's so true.
Come on.